Suspension's lifted. Yeah. And then he tells me there's a whopper of a case he wants to put me in charge of. I'm back, Pat. I'm back on top and ready to roll.
Brilliant.
Hey, Dad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these are for you,
Oh, thanks. That's great. Thanks.
And this is for you.
Ooh, that's my boy. Hey, I'm going to open this now.
Oh, good.
Listen, Pat's getting home at the weekend.
Oh, well done.
Well, I think they need the bed, actually, but I'm going to take things easy.
Right. You've got another glass, do you want one?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, we can share one. Hey, lovely. Here's to you, sweetheart, and your recovery.
Thanks.
Good. Hey, boy, watch out for that glass, Lynch.
Next Thursday at 9, Kay Miller's new drama, set in a slimming club, Fat Friends. Here in a moment, the ITV Nightly News.
Violent, brutal attack. One of ours. It's bad. Student, 17.
It's gathering momentum. Each one's more violent than the last.
Can't walk away. After what he did, I saw that room.
Don't make it personal, Jack.
Don't argue with your father. He's driving you and that's it.
If anyone believes we're not going to catch the man responsible for these crimes, leave now. I believe we're about to get a bit of luck that we deserve.
Ross Kemp in Without Motive, a new series, Monday at 9.
ITV Movie Blockbuster.
She watched as the underworld took her parents. Now she's ready for revenge, but she's not alone.
You just stay away from this, guys. The future's about to become very dark.
Sylvester Stallone, Sharon Stone and James Woods.
You lose, I win.
An ITV Movie Blockbuster, The Specialist, Friday at 9.
The penultimate race of the season.
Fantastic, and the crowd has gone berserk.
The Japanese Grand Prix this weekend on ITV.
Plop, plop, plop went the rain. That was our holiday. Oh, I could see cars, 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 cars. After I fell down and left 13 blood, I splashed down the side of a mountain. And then I went on an African safari, travelled back in time, and met some film stars.
Is this all, Oscar?
Well, you wouldn't believe the rest.
Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. Feel the magic. Find out for yourself how magic feels. Call 08705 000000 for your free holiday planning video and discover the magic inside.
Sheila, why did you start eating Benecol? I found it was the easiest way to reduce my cholesterol. We have Benecol 2 to 3 times a day, and every lunchtime I have a yogurt. They are delicious, and I've also used it in cooking.
Well, clinical trials have proved that Benecol reduces LDL cholesterol by up to 14%. So, Sheila, has it worked for you?
I can actually vouch for Benecol now. I know it works.
Benecol's proven to reduce cholesterol. Why not prove it to yourself?
Radox Vitality is a new kind of body wash that moisturizes your skin for a full 24 hours. But the real difference is it invigorates your senses with fragrances of revitalizing mandarin or the refreshing scent of sunflower, plant essences and vitamins. New Radox Vitality. Moisturize your skin and invigorate your senses. Blondes remember their first time.
Well, first time, that was at my friend's house.
Mine was on holiday in Spain.
Your first time, trust your colour to Garnier Belle-Colo with natural oils that care. Belle-Colo shampoos in so easy, 20 minutes, and you can become a natural-looking blonde whenever you want. Belle-Colo is Garnier's first permanent colour that works with your hair's own tones to give you colour so natural you just can't go wrong. Belle-Colo, formulated and controlled by Laboratoire Garnier.
Only one TV channel has so many programmes dedicated to gardening, cookery and interiors. UK Style, TV that brings ideas to life.
To get UK style and more through an aerial and your existing TV, call on digital on 0808 100 0101.
Beginning this week only in Hello, Posh and Becks. Extracts from Andrew Morton's sensational and controversial new book, which looks behind the glamour and the gloss of this highly publicized couple. Posh and Becks, only in Hello, on sale now.
Same phone, different phone. The new Ericsson A2618. Check it.
In an ancient tournament, three strangers must defend our world. The ITV movie premiere, Mortal Kombat, Saturday, 10:50.
Celebrations in Belgrade tonight as opposition declares Serbia free. The people power that finally spelt the end for Milosevic. Hague's message to Tories, we're ready for government. Key witness in Kenneth Noy murder trial is shot dead.
From ITN, the ITV Nightly News with Dermot Monahan.
Good evening. Slobodan Milosevic, who led Yugoslavia through 13 disastrous years, was overthrown tonight. He's said to have fled. Where to isn't known after the federal parliament in Belgrade and then the state television station was stormed and taken over by his opponents. There were hundreds of thousands of them on the streets, too many for the riot police to stop, though they tried for a while. The army stayed out of it. Tonight, Vojislav Kostunica, winner of a presidential election which the authorities today tried to annul, addressed what he called a liberated Serbia. Kevin Dunn reports on the fall of Milosevic.
Smoke rising from the Parliament building in Belgrade after full power. The symbols and sanctuaries of Slobodan Milosevic's regime falling one after the other in an extraordinary demonstration of popular will. From the windows, showers of documents hurled out in contempt by the crowd. After being cheated in elections, they claimed victory on the streets. And they bore helmets and flak jackets, trophies from the police who simply gave way to the masses. They vented particular anger at the state television station. For so long, the mouthpiece and manipulator of Milosevic's official propaganda. A hijacked bulldozer was used in the TV station lobby. Once they were inside, it was ransacked and set alight. They burned too the cars of television workers. The station, blindingly loyal for so long to Milosevic, later announced it was recognizing Vojislav Kostunica as president. There were some casualties, victims apparently of police and security forces who were staying loyal to the regime. But there was no widespread bloodshed. The pillars of the regime caved in after offering less resistance than opposition supporters had feared. The day began with hundreds of thousands of people responding to the opposition's call to march on Belgrade. They came from all over Yugoslavia to demand that President Milosevic should surrender the power he had clung to for so long. The crowds congregated at the federal parliament. The first attempt to storm the building was met by resistance from the police, who fired volleys of tear gas. But they were not to be deterred. They overwhelmed the police with their numbers and their determination. Many policemen, in their camouflage fatigues, then joined the crowd as they reclaimed the building meant to represent the popular will. It now did, and they flew the national flag in triumph. But this was not an entirely peaceful revolt. They set fire to the building and looted its contents. Of President Milosevic, nothing was seen or heard, as his government, which had taken Yugoslavia through failed wars into international isolation and sanctions, appeared to crumble. Tonight, Vojislav Kostunica addressed tens of thousands of supporters in Belgrade, who acclaimed him as Yugoslavia's legitimate president. He told them they had liberated the country, and victory was theirs. And a few minutes ago, he appeared on television, now under the control of his supporters. He called on the Serb people not to use violence, and he urged Milosevic to give up power peacefully. With opposition supporters controlling the streets tonight, little was known of Milosevic's whereabouts, though there were reports that 3 military aircraft had taken off from an airfield outside Belgrade. But it was Mr. Kostunica who appeared to be in control of the country, and Milosevic's rule to be coming to an end. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
Well, just before we came on the air, I spoke to the Balkan expert, Misha Glenny, who's in Belgrade, and he described the situation there tonight.
It is one vast party. People are out in the streets, they're dancing, they're singing. They have not experienced anything like this in their lives, and nor indeed have I. There is an overwhelming sense that Milosevic has gone. We don't know whether he's physically gone yet, although there are strong rumours and some official sources saying that he's left the country. But I have never witnessed a revolution like this, and I've seen them all in Eastern Europe. This is the most remarkable uprising of workers, peasants, intellectuals. This is a true revolution that has happened here today.
And what is the next formal step in Vojislav Kostunica's accession to power?
Well, Kostunica is now the president, or the president-elect, I don't know what's going to happen to the other one, of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The first thing he did this evening was to call an emergency session of the Federal Parliament, which can't, of course, be held in its proper building because it was burnt out today. But I think Kostunica and his allies in the opposition are likely to call a new round of elections for the Federal Parliament and possibly for the Serbian Parliament as well, in order to embark upon a clean start.
Misha Glenny in Belgrade, thank you very much. History in the making. Well, all day Western leaders had been urging President Milosevic to stand down and avoid bloodshed. But what was it, apart from the sheer weight of numbers on the streets today, that appears finally to have got him out? Here's our diplomatic editor, Robert Moore.
Very possibly this was the moment when the 13-year rule of Slobodan Milosevic ended. But tonight it became clear that the Yugoslav security forces and the federal army would not fight to save his regime. Instead, they have sided with the people. Just 2 weeks ago, President Milosevic was in triumphalist mood, seeking re-election and surrounded by his supporters. Now that self-confidence, which he displayed as he voted alongside his wife, has been shattered. The man who started so many Balkan wars and who ruled over a disintegrating country had no way back. As he surveyed the capital today and pondered the future, Milosevic had run out of options. His regime had imploded with astonishing speed. His instruments of control, the police, the military and the media had all turned their backs on him. The only question that he faced was whether to seek refuge in the Serb heartland or flee abroad to a sympathetic Slavic country. But few will want to harbour a leader who's indicted on war crimes. Across the West, leaders recognise this as a pivotal moment in Balkan history. An uprising that is on the verge of utterly changing the landscape in southeastern Europe.
The verdict from the elections was clear. The verdict from the streets is clear. The message for Milosevic is clear. Go now. Go before any more lives are lost, before there is any more destruction. And I say this to the people of Serbia, whatever the differences that have been between us, now that you have reached for democracy, the hand of friendship and partnership from countries like Britain is there for you, so that together, in whatever way we can, we rebuild this troubled part of Europe in order to secure a peaceful and a prosperous future for all the people there.
The people of Serbia have spoken with their ballots. They have spoken on the streets. I hope the hour is near when their voices will be heard and we can welcome them to democracy, to Europe, to the world's community. And when they do, we will move as quickly as possible to lift the sanctions and build the kind of responsible partnership that the people there deserve.
And the West's new partner, poised tonight to take control of an isolated but jubilant nation, is Vojislav Kostunica, a quiet and dignified lawyer who promises to take Serbia back to democracy and into the heart of Europe. He knows he has brought down with his supporters one of Europe's last authoritarian regimes. The cities and people of the former Yugoslavia will long bear the scars of the wars that Milosevic triggered for his own political purposes. Hundreds of thousands died in the ferocious fighting that swept across Serbia, Croatia and Bosnia. There are hardline nationalists who may mourn the demise of the regime, but overwhelmingly, as evident on the streets of Belgrade tonight, it will be welcomed. Like the revolutions that swept across Eastern and Central Europe a decade ago, this was a people's victory, not achieved by the West, but by Serbia's own people, turning on a ruler who had brought them humiliation and misery. Robert Moore, ITN.
Robert, can it really all have happened so smoothly and quickly?
Well, Dermot Milosevic has negotiated his way out of many perilous situations, but surely this really is the end. He's been simply utterly abandoned by the church, by the media, the army, the police, even the miners and his old former ally, Russia. And the man in charge now is Vojislav Kostunica, who made that really seminal, magical speech in central Belgrade tonight when he told the roaring crowd, "Good evening, Serbia, you are liberated."
And what of Milosevic? Where might he be and what might happen to him?
Well, we don't know where he is physically tonight. His options are severely limited. His countrymen may want to put him on trial for corruption. The West certainly want to put him on trial on crimes against humanity and on genocide charges. There are reports, as Misha Glenny alluded to, that he may have fled from Belgrade airport tonight on board one of 3 Antonov transport planes. There's speculation he may have gone to Russia, to Belarus, or to China. But what's really key here is where he's not, and he's not in power.
Robert Moore, thanks a lot. Now the other news, and the Conservative Party leader, William Hague, challenged the Prime Minister today to call a snap election. He told his party conference the Conservatives were ready for it and ready to govern for all parts of the United Kingdom and for all the people. Our political editor, John Sargent, reports.
For William Hague, this was one of the most serious and difficult moments of his career. With the Tories just ahead in recent opinion polls, he has to convince the country that he could become Prime Minister. But first he wants to demonstrate that he could make jokes too, especially about the Labour Party.
Last week in Brighton, the security was so tight it was Wednesday before they stabbed each other in the back. Tony Blair announced again, "I will act." Well, of course he will. It's all been an act. It's only ever been an act. He's the biggest actor in town.
With his parents watching, William Hague made his big theme the idea that the Tories were the party of the mainstream majority, to be found in the countryside and across the country at large.
Rural people look to the Conservative Party to represent them and to stand up for their way of life, and we will not let them down. We are ready to govern for all parts of the country, and by country I mean the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
That's if there was a country to govern, and Britain didn't become part of a European superstate.
We will be the champions of that flexible Europe, and we will be the champions of Britain's right to govern itself, for we believe in being in Europe, not run by Europe.
This is how he summed up.
I just want to bring to a people so deeply disillusioned by its government a party that understands their concerns, a party that shares their values, a party that believes in our country, a government, a conservative government, ready to govern for all the people.
It was deliberately sober and relatively low-key, but the loyal audience here loved it, especially Nigel Hague, his father. There were no new policies, but the tone was distinctive. He wanted to portray himself as someone with common sense rather than a visionary, someone who had been to a comprehensive school with strong roots in Yorkshire, a Prime Minister in waiting who was not Tony Blair. Before Mr Hague's speech, the Conservatives were forced into an embarrassing climb down over their controversial plan for zero tolerance for those caught in possession of cannabis. Yesterday, Anne Widdecombe proposed fines of £100 on those caught with the drug. It was also announced that those involved would get a criminal record. But today, the Shadow Home Secretary, faced with widespread criticism, was forced into what looked like a climb down.
They would have a police record in the same way that if they got a caution, they would have a police record. Or in the same way that if you have a motoring offence, you have a police record. But that is different from a criminal record.
And it was revealed the Shadow Cabinet hadn't discussed the plan.
Did you know that this was going to be the policy?
Well, we've had a great deal of policy announcements this week.
Embarrassing though this was, it wasn't enough to dampen Mr Hague's mood when he left the conference centre.
Thank you very much. I think it went very well by the look of it.
John Sargent, ITN, Bournemouth.
A man who gave evidence against Kenneth Noy in the M25 road rage murder trial was shot dead this afternoon outside a superstore in Kent. Police wouldn't comment on any possible motive, though the victim, Alan de Cabral, had talked of receiving threats. Here's ITN's Terry Lloyd.
Armed police were called to the superstore in Ashford, Kent, where the man was shot dead at lunchtime today, 6 months after giving evidence at the Old Bailey. Alan de Cabral was one of the main prosecution witnesses at the trial of Kenneth Noy. He told the court how, from his Rolls-Royce, he watched Noy stab Stephen Cameron to death after a row on the M25. The two men had clashed on a slip road and began a heated argument before Noy pulled out a knife and killed 21-year-old Mr Cameron. Noy was found guilty of the road rage attack and jailed for life. There were many claims that witnesses had been intimidated, and Mr de Cabral said he'd been warned not to give evidence. The dead man also complained that 3 bullets had been pushed through his letterbox, but police tonight refused to speculate on any motive for the latest killing. Terry Lloyd, ITN.
The shooting broke out between Israelis and Palestinians again today, just hours after the announcement of a 4th ceasefire. The worst trouble was again in Gaza, where 2 more Palestinians were killed. The total dead in 8 days of violence is now 69. Earlier, both sides had ordered their forces to pull back from the worst trouble spots. Police investigating the disappearance of a woman and her 4 teenage children found 3 bodies today. They were in a woodshed at their home near Helston in Cornwall. What were thought to be more human remains were found in a field 6 miles away. The missing woman's husband is being questioned by murder squad detectives. It's been a day of remembrance for victims of the Ladbroke Grove rail disaster a year ago today. There was a 1-minute silence at Paddington and other stations, and during a memorial service in London, candles were lit for each of the 31 people killed. Tonight's financial figures: the FTSE 100 index finished 47 points up. On Wall Street, the Dow was 60 points lower, and the pound is trading nearly 1.5 cents down against the dollar. The main news again is on the fall of President Slobodan Milosevic of Yugoslavia, driven out by a mass uprising by his political opponents in Belgrade today. It all began this afternoon when crowds stormed past riot police into the federal parliament building, setting fire to the rooms inside. Next, they took a bulldozer to the state television station and assumed control there. Crucially, the army refused to intervene to keep Milosevic in power and returned to barracks to the delight of the crowd. Tonight, the president-elect, Vojislav Kostunica, said Serbia had been liberated. Slobodan Milosevic is reported to have fled Belgrade, but his whereabouts are not known. Now let's see how tomorrow's papers are covering the extraordinary events in Yugoslavia. Good evening, liberated Serbia, says The Times, quoting the words of the opposition leader Vojislav Kostunica. The paper describes today's events as a revolution. The picture is of the smoking parliament building surrounded by angry protesters. The storming of Belgrade is how The Independent describes the scenes, with its picture of demonstrators in a final push against Milosevic. The paper says Serbia's capital city is in the grip of revolutionary chaos. A hated regime crumbles, says The Guardian. The picture shows the police using tear gas before the storming of Parliament. Protesters waving flags outside that same building dominate the Mail's front page. The paper calls this the People's Revolution and reports that the tyrant Milosevic is toppled. That same dramatic picture of demonstrators is the Mirror's front page. Get out, you slob, is the headline. The paper says Milosevic's bloody 13 years' reign is now at an end. And that's it for now. The ITV Evening News is at 6:30 tomorrow, and we're back at 11 from me and all the team here with the ITV Nightly News. Goodbye.